Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Health in Islam. I'm your host Ismail Chartier, and with us today is our good friend Dr. Yasser. It's a pleasure to have you again on our show.
Thank you.
Today's topic is depression, and this is a huge topic, so let's go ahead and swing for the fences and try to knock this one out of the park. With your permission, I'd like to just jump in is what I'm trying to say. How would you define depression? I mean, for example, some people might say, you know, my shoes got stepped on, I'm having a bad day, I'm depressed. Is this really depression?
No, that is not depression. That is actually just a feeling if somebody got hurt or something. Depression is a feeling of sorrow being accumulated for a long period of time, and it's amplified into the feeling of depression or the state of being of depression. So it's not only a feeling of sorrow, it engulfs the person into a depressed mood. And the depressed mood, it makes that person unable to feel joy, unable to enjoy his life or her life. It makes them give up, basically. They don't want to go to work, they don't want to go to school, they don't want to do anything, they don't enjoy anything.
Blanket and cry all day, kind of.
That's
one manifestation
the end result of depression. You have two types of depression. One of them is situational depression, and the other one is clinical depression. The clinical depression is basically chemical imbalance, which is imbalance in the chemicals of the brain. The adrenaline and the dopamine, etc., etc. There are a lot of chemicals that need to be balanced. What happens in the clinical depression is that we treat it with medication to bring the chemicals to the desired level.
Things like this.
Yes. And sometimes the other kind of depression, the situational depression, if it is prolonged for a long period of time, it becomes into a chemical depression. So it also needs medication to bring the chemicals to the desired level, along with cognitive behavioral modification therapy to be able to get the person to move and get back into his state of being.
I have two quick questions for you about this. I know a friend back in America who, she had a nervous breakdown, and basically she's on all kinds of medications right now because she's clinically depressed. Now, she was told that she will never be able to be taken off of these medications. She'll be on them for the rest of her life, lithium and drugs like this. Is this true that once, I mean, you obviously don't know her case, so you couldn't say, but in general, once you're on a drug like lithium, are you always on a drug like lithium, or do you be weaned off it at some point, or?
Well, a lot of times in my experience that the lithium, we have to do a level of lithium on a weekly basis once you're on lithium to see the level in the blood. But if you have lack of lithium in your blood, you need to be on lithium, and it usually lasts for a long, long period of time. And that's because of the glands in your body doesn't produce enough chemicals that need to be produced. So if that is the problem, then she will stay or he'll stay on it for.
And then I've heard of drug-induced depression, like the party drug ecstasy in America. I've heard that it, after prolonged use or even after the first use of this drug, that it can cause deep clinical depression, where it drops the level of serotonin in your brain to the point where you're a wreck, basically.
Yes. This has to do with drug use or abuse. Basically, a lot of people who turn into drugs is because they're depressed and they self-medicate. When they self-medicate, they take a downer, because we have a theory that we say likes. So if somebody is depressed already, is of a depressed mood, they take something that is depressive or depressant, or something that is downer. And that has to do with when they go down, it's a complete cycle. They go all the way down and then they get kicked back up again. But then the cycle doesn't stop. So what happens in the drugs and alcohol, when you take something that is a downer, you become more depressed. But then at the end of the cycle, you get out to normal and you go up more a little bit, and then you go back into depression, the depressed mode.
When you sink lower, when you go back down, do you actually go lower than you were before into the depression?
You go lower than you were before into the depression. Well, so the answer for that is not getting into drugs and alcohol, it's getting the proper treatment for it.
What are the signs of depression? Like if I was looking at like my wife or my dad or myself, what would be the signs of someone who was depressed?
Okay. If you've seen somebody within the immediate family, for instance, somebody who you talk to and they lose interest of conversations, they lose interest of sitting and having conversation with the rest of the family, or they don't want to go to work, they become, I don't want to say lazy, but they don't have the energy. They have low energy to do anything else. They don't have enjoyment or enjoy in life. Even when you say jokes or anything, they don't feel like they enjoy. They were in sports before and now they leave the sports. So there are a lot of indications for depression.
If they're a teenager, their work starts getting worse at school. It's kind of almost mirrored drug use in some ways.
Yes.
A record number of people are on medication for depression. Do you feel medications are overprescribed in America? They seem to want to, they advertise them on TV and the magazines, you don't feel good. Take this little happy smiley face that bounces down the screen,
Well, everybody wants to be happy, but everybody wants the quick answer for that. And that is a quick answer. However, medication doesn't really treat depression. Medication treats the symptom of depression. For a depressed patient, they need to learn how to live their life in a healthy way. And that requires therapy. And therapy, there are a lot of aspects in therapy that we're not going to go through right now. But they need therapy beside the medication that they're taking.
Therapy is always a very important thing. Now, depression is not just a state of mind, it's also physical. When you're truly depressed, it affects other organs of your body and affects just the way you normally live. What are the physical changes that you would notice in somebody who's depressed?
Well, they're unable to concentrate. Concentration level goes down, and the length of the concentration goes down. You have physical changes in their body. It varies from one person
like gain
to
weight
another.
Or lose weight. Or
Gaining weight from one person to another person could be losing weight. So the depression it has physical effects from one person to another. However, the effects have to take a period that would last for about 6 months in order for us to diagnose a depression.
So you could have a small depression maybe where you're just kind of depressed, but it's not for 6 months, or is that just you're just kind of down in the dumps?
Well, if you have it every once in a blue moon or every once in a while, and it's the long period of time that you're okay in between, so you're not really depressed. Maybe you just have symptoms of sorrow or aggravation or anything else, and you chose to be by yourself. So the symptoms have to last for about 6 months.
6 months. Now, in the Holy Quran, are there teachings that can help us in avoiding and treating depression?
Of course. This is an area that we don't talk a lot about, but in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يقول في القرآن ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. And this is something that when you read the Quran, live according to the Sunnah and the religion the right way, your heart will feel comforted from whatever is going on around. And it gives you some kind of energy that you're able to move on and keep going.
For our audience that doesn't speak Arabic, can you translate that verse just briefly?
ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. It's in remembrance of God. Your hearts will feel comforted and be at peace. So this is something else that we take from the teaching of Islam.
But exercise, like if someone is depressed, going and running and jogging, taking up karate, something like this would help with their depression, just being out and around other people.
Just by moving and doing other things, of course exercising, it changes the chemicals in your body. Because when you are in depressed mode and you just don't do anything, the chemicals in your body, it takes a different shape, it takes a different place. So when you are moving, different glands in your body, it starts secreting different things.
So the depressed people, do they seek treatment on their own, or do they have to be kicked and dragged into the clinic?
Well, depressed person is not going to seek treatment of his own, because if he's able to do that, that means he's able to live his life or her life. So actually, they have to be taken to treatment by a family member or somebody who's close, significant other, somebody who's close to them.
They will never ever never go in to see.
I don't think they have the capability of seeking treatment of their own,
So
unless if they are at that stage of the depression that they know that they need help, and they're depressed, and they go and ask for treatment.
What is your advice to the family and friends of somebody who seems to be depressed? How can they help this person? What can they do to help them get out of this depression?
Talk to them. Try to get them out of their mood. Try to get them to go and seek therapy. Not leave them alone, because a lot of people just give up. Well, I tried everything with you, I don't know what to do anymore, and they just leave them in the room.
I'll see you later. If you want to be this way, you be this way by yourself.
Yeah, so the other family member might feel angry towards the person who's depressed. But depression is a sickness, it's a disease, and it needs treatment. And that's what they need to remember, is that this depressed person needs help. And if that person is unable to seek help for him or herself, then they will have to be taken for that help.
To a doctor or to a
clinic. To be made to go and ask for it.
We're going to go ahead and take a break right now and pay some bills, and we'll be back, inshallah, in just 1 minute. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Health in Islam. Once again, I'm Ismail Chartier, and nothing's changed since the last break. We still have Dr. Yasser here. So the depressed people, do they seek treatment on their own, or do they have to be kicked and dragged into the clinic?
Well, the depressed person is not going to seek treatment of his own, because if he's able to do that, that means he's able to live his life or her life. So actually, they have to be taken to treatment by a family member or somebody who's close, significant other, somebody who's close to them.
They will never ever never go in to see.
I don't think they have the capability of seeking treatment of their own, unless if they are at that stage of the depression that they know that they need help, and they're depressed, and they go and ask for treatment.
What is your advice to the family and friends of somebody who seems to be depressed? How can they help this person? What can they do to help them get out of this depression?
Talk to them. Try to get them out of their mood. Try to get them to go and seek therapy. Not leave them alone, because a lot of people just give up. Well, I tried everything with you, I don't know what to do anymore, and they just leave them in the room.
I'll see you later. If you want to be this way, you be this way by yourself.
Yeah, so the other family member might feel angry towards the person who's depressed. But depression is a sickness, it's a disease, and it needs treatment. And that's what they need to remember, is that this depressed person needs help. And if that person is unable to seek help for him or herself, then they will have to be taken for that help.
To a doctor or to a
or
clinic.
to be made to go and ask for it.
Is there a correlation between lack of spirituality and being depressed? A lack of believing in Qadr, the predestination of God, and being depressed?
Well, let me say it this way. To answer this question, I would like to say that there is a correlation between mental illness and spirituality, or mental health and spirituality. So all of the emotional sickness or disease or disturbances is connected to a lack of spirituality somewhat. So there is a connection in there. However, a lot of people have lack of spirituality and they don't get depressed. They know how to deal with life on life terms. And as a Muslim person, I was always taught that spirituality, and I've seen it with me, I mean personally, spirituality gives me a boost. And I think a lot of people, the spirituality will give them a boost to...
I know when I'm feeling, kind of low, I say, SubhanAllah, this is what's meant for me to go through right now. This is a test. And if I can get through this test, then inshallah it'll be better.
Yes.
And I think this is what you're talking about, basically, is belief in a higher power, saying this is out of my control, this is part of His divine wisdom that helps me through this.
That is true. And from a different point of view, too, is that in the Muslim religion, we always talk about, we're always reminded of death. Mm-hmm. That is actually a way of looking at it, because if you know what the end is going to be, what's in between is that you're going to live your life according to what the teaching of the religion is going to be. So in the West or in the States or whatever, we don't want to talk about death or
Oh,
dying
no
or
way.
anything, and then we're hit with it at the very end as if it's a slap in the face.
And it's a sucker punch.
But it's actually a fact of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it needs to be talked about openly. And that changes a lot in the personality and in the emotions of each human being.
So the more we communicate to ourselves and the people we love about death, that eventually we're going to die, puts us at ease with our place now. Is that what you're saying? It makes it easier for us to live our lives knowing that we're racing to a point.
I think it puts things in perspective for each and everyone. So you don't really overly depressed, or you didn't get overly angry, or you didn't get overly happy, or like mania, or, you know, it puts things in perspective for each and everyone so they can live their life, or their lives the way it ought to be lived. That's a personal opinion. And spirituality now is actually, in psychology, is taking place in a lot of treatment, and that there is a spiritual aspect to it. And I think it makes treatment a lot more effective.
It gives people something to grab onto, to believe in, to help them through the hard times.
That's right.
Why is depression so common in America? Why are so many people depressed? You know, they're stressed and they're depressed and they're angry.
Stressed, depressed, and angry. That's another slogan to it.
Why is it such a phenomenon in the West?
In the life that we live right now, there are many losses for each human being. There are a lot of sorrow. And there is no time for a close-knit society. It's like everybody going to work, from work to home. They don't talk. Even if you take a look at the children right now, it's not like you sit on the table and you talk on the dining room table while you're eating supper or something. No, you
sit in front of the video game.
In front of the video game or the TV or something. They do not talk about anything. So it becomes a lonely life. And with loneliness
comes
depression, and it comes a lot of other diseases that, you know, emotional discomfort. And that's the life that we live right. So we need to go back to the basics. That's what I said.
So to help depression on an individual level, we almost need to revamp the way we live as a society.
Or we need to get back to the basics. And the key for the cure, if you take a look at the values for each society, it's in the value system. These values came from one place. There you'll find the cure for something like the depression.
So if, like, I know, like in the 50s in America, depression was almost unheard of when we had the Leave It to Beaver kind of, mom was at home, dad went to work 40 hours a week, then he came home and he spent time with the kids throwing the baseball in the backyard. And then in the 70s and 60s, when this really stopped, this phenomenon stopped, you started to see more things come into play. You started to see more cases of depression, more cases of stress, you know, with more people entering the workforce and less jobs. And
it's a stressful society. But I would like to say that, you know, they could carry on with their lives, but they need to have time to stay together and connect together.
Family dinner time.
Dinner time. Even in the neighborhood, they need to connect together. They need to know things about each other. They need to get to know each other. We're human beings, and human beings cannot and will not live alone.
It's like the concept in Islam of praying at the masjid in Jum'ah for every salat. Because you know your neighbors that way. And if you're not at the masjid, they say, well, why aren't you at the mosque? Why aren't you there? He must be sick. Something must be wrong with his family.
That's
and
true.
It keeps the community together. So this is what we kind of need to do. We need to have draw people to one location where they get to know each other.
Yes, or even ask about your neighbors, like what we have in Islam. Ask about your neighbor. So if this is what we live with, you're going to find a lot of the depression is going to go away. Not totally, but it will take a dip. Anger is going to take a dip. I mean, that's why I said we need to go back to the basics.
You do not truly believe unless you want for your brother what you want for yourself. If we all applied this this hadith in our lives, then there'd be no way that, well, there still might be depression, but it would be on a very small level because you'd be wanting for your brother not to be depressed.
That's true.
So you'd go over and you'd see him and you'd help.
That's right. It's just a human companion. That's what a lot of people need nowadays.
Like with the elderly. You know, maybe their husband has died or their wife has died and they're by themselves. I know that they do a lot of volunteer work in the hospitals and stuff like this. And it helps them, it cures them of their depression because now they have contact. I know a lady in Chicago, she holds infants, newborns. Yes. She's an elderly woman. Her whole family is, gone, but so she holds infants, and this helps her, and it helps them. Mm-hmm. She holds preemies.
Yes.
Gives them love, and she gets love.
It's interesting that you just mentioned that, because I was going to say the elderly, when they get old, they need the human connection. And a lot of people, when somebody gets old, they all forgotten about it.
Yeah, they just leave.
Nobody talks to them, nobody do anything, which causes depression, which could be the cause of a lot of other physical diseases.
It manifests as physical diseases if it's not treated long enough.
Yes.
I know in Islam we have the concept of taking care of the elderly and bringing them to your house. And your mom and dad live with you when they're old, and they're always around family.
I know it's a task, and sometimes it's a difficult task, but it has to be done.
It has to be done.
Yes, it's helpful for the younger and the older.
Well, you learn wisdom from the elderly.
Yes.
To help you learn your value system.
It's almost like, passing values from one generation to another generation. Mm-hmm. And that way you don't lose your value system. You don't lose the way
and then
to live your life.
Your elderly, they see your mom and dad see their grandchildren. And so then they don't get they don't have that depression issue of being alone because they have their grandchildren, and the children have someone to talk to.
But you need to take a look at the depression as if it's clinical depression. This could be happening from somebody at the time of when they're little or babies. Yes. So you're not going to know it when they're babies. But I mean, if it's a clinical or chemical imbalance, they need to be medicated for it. So you need to take a look at the symptoms. You need to pay close attention to the children or to the family members, one to another, and if it needs treatment, you take them for treatment.
Now, when you check, like say the serotonin level in somebody, do you check it by their blood? Do you take blood tests on them, or
you take a blood test? You make a complete blood test, and you ask them for depression to know the levels of the chemicals to determine whether they have depression or not. And then with teenagers, you have different things. Depression doesn't come out as depression; it comes out as anger.
If you have a kid that's cutting on his arm and
or getting into a lot of fights, or not getting along with kids in the school, with other students in the school or anything, so that the outer face of it is anger, but the inner face is depression. So it doesn't come out as depression; it comes out as anger. Wow. A lot of parents would just say, "Well, I don't know, my kids are angry. I don't know what happened to him."
He's wrecking everything in sight.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank you very much, Yasser Al Manawy, for coming by. And we'll see you next time on Health in Islam, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Oh